being recorded? Not yet.
We are being recorded as of now, so we are all set. On the topic of administrative and BUUSD Director Evaluations, I will present them at an update on those or a discussion of those with the board on our first February meeting, and I can provide the board an update on the process at our second regular meeting in January. The board has the central office report. One, I'll ask if there are any questions about the report, including the enrollment update, and a late addition to the central office report is a publication of the survey results on students returning to BUUSD. So I will ask the board if there are any questions about the enrollment report or other items in the central office report.
David, Victoria here with a question. So I just had a question, given looking at the enrollment report that we currently have, and given that 25% of our students have said, at least 25% of respondents said that they weren't planning on re-enrolling in the BUUSD, how are we going to reevaluate our financials based upon that survey?
Right, it's my opinion, looking at this information now, just one moment, someone's knocking on our virtual door. Okay, so the question that you're asking is, given our enrollment updates for December and January, and then given the survey that our communications director sent out, and to clarify for board members and people in the audience, I directed the communication director to send out a survey to all families who had left us during this school year, either to pursue homeschooling or to enroll in another school. And they were asked, would they plan on returning for the fall of 2021? Would they not return for the fall of 2021? Or were they unsure? And 28% said that they were not planning on returning, and 28%, round numbers, said that they would return, and 44%, round number, said that they were unsure. It's my opinion that at this point, in January of the year, with the school having transitions to in-person learning, that these numbers are interesting, but I don't think that they are entirely useful for planning. I think that as we have more time spent with students in full in-person learning, and we have more information about the fall of 2021, we should send out the survey again. Also, thinking about your question, Victoria, our budgeting and our planning for staffing, as we discussed in Finance Committee and previous board meetings, was using the assumptions or the numbers of students that we had in previous years to plan our staffing. Because again, for our district and districts across Vermont, student enrollment for next year is unsure. And I think that was a prudent thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions to Superintendent on central office? Alice?
What will become of VTVLC? Will that be shutting down or will that be continuing? What, do we have any information on what they're going to be doing?
I do not have a definite answer on that, but you're right to bring it up because it's time to consider that. You know, in speaking with Secretary French and the information that we're getting from the Agency of Education, it's the expectation that Vermont schools will be returning to full in-person learning for the fall of 2021. That's with the information that we know now. But it is the time to consider and plan the extent to which we would have full remote options for students in 2021, if that even is something that we entertain doing.
Any other questions? Alice, do you want to, you have another question? You all set? Okay. Any other board members have questions? Then we'll move on to the building reports, if there are no other questions in that area. We have the Spalding High School report that was in our packet. Are there any questions for Brenda Waterhouse and her staff? We had an extensive report from the Central Vermont Career Center. Are there any questions on that report? By the by, any of the administrators want to add anything to their reports thus far? Brenda or Penny?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
No, for Penny, okay. Berry City Elementary School. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, everybody, I think it was in the report, but just in case there are community members watching tonight or here tonight who didn't read it, Hayden and I really, really want to stress how much we thank our whole community for making our drop-off and pickup procedures work as smoothly as they have. I mean, it has been a huge victory for us, and we're trying to check in, hundreds of people every morning, little kids, adults, and we've had to make some changes since we came back from the break and are preparing to have more people come next week. And folks just have not missed a beat at all. I can't say enough with how cooperative, patient, kind, supportive the community's been. It's a real highlight of our day, and I just wanted to really publicly, emphatically thank everybody for it. So we try to make a big deal of it in our report, but just in case people didn't get to see it. Thank you.
Hayden, do you have anything you wish to add to that?
It's not necessarily an addition, but I just wanted to mention we have a lot of changes, arrival times, bus routes, all that pickup and drop off stuff happening starting Tuesday. A lot of letters, messages, emails have gone out. I know things get missed, so I just wanted to make sure everyone was keeping up on emails and everything, because there's been a lot of changes. We're trying to get the word out as best we can.
Thank you. Barrytown Middle and Elementary School.
Wait.
Sonia, go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
In the report, it talks about PE, and Mr. Bates has built an incredible maze. Are we not using the gym for PE?
We only use the gym on inclement weather days. So all of our PE teachers have been extraordinarily creative this year to develop appropriate curriculum and lessons for outdoor PE. It's been really successful. I probably shouldn't mention this out loud, but the weather has cooperated almost every day this year, and kids are really having a great time in PE and still learning and focus on standards. But just, it's outside and it's in the snow right now, but it's been very successful so far.
So, quick question: what is considered inclement weather?
There's a state guide for the inclement weather. One of it is based on 10 degrees of wind chill around 10 degrees or below, and we would be exercising caution when it comes close to there, and then around thunder and lightning, and then obviously hail and precipitation like that.
Okay. So I'm getting to something else, so thank you. So is the gym primarily empty?
No, not necessarily, because we have a lot of different intervention and special ed services, and especially when as we're planning to open the school to more in-person learners, we're using a lot of those spaces for intervention services, one-on-one special ed services, because of just the nature of things. But yes.
I would also add, we have to be prepared. It's mid-January, and we have if I'm correct, Hayden, and everybody here, I don't think we've had a day where those weather conditions that would bring us inside have occurred. If they do happen, we have to have a place to bring the kids. And if they're inside doing PE, they cannot be doing heavy exertion type activities. It's going to be non-aerobic, and we're going to need a place for them to be. So we have to be prepared for all those contingencies, just so we all know. We've been very, very fortunate with the weather.
I completely understand. I'm just trying to find open space for our 7th and 8th grade kids who are not having the same amount of in-class experience as our other students. So that's why I'm asking. Thank you.
Any questions for any of the 4 schools? Who?
Paul, this is Guy. So is that the same for Spalding and Berrytown in terms of the PE?
Guy, this is Jen from Berrytown. Yes, that would be the same for Berrytown as well. We also use our large gym for dismissal and arrival.
Okay, thank you.
And at the high school, PE is mostly inside in the gymnasium, and we have 2 classes happening simultaneously in that space. And they are doing low aerobic activities as well as flipped classroom. Most of our students do not come prepared for outdoor activity. So we do not typically do a lot of outdoor activity on a whole class route.
Okay, thank
And
you.
Paul, Guy, this is Erica. In the middle school at Berrytown, that would be the same. Our students don't generally come dressed for weather. Anybody has a middle schooler might know that jackets are not cool once you hit 5th grade. So they are also inside during PE time.
I wasn't going to forget you, Eric. I was just working my way through the chain. And is there any other questions for any of these reports? If not, we will move on to 5.3, which are the committee reports, and 5.31 is Communications Committee. Does Communications Committee Chair wish to add more to this report beyond the minutes?
And excuse me, Paul, and sorry, Alice. Before we move on to 5.3, I want to thank the principals for being here for their building reports. And I know that they have a lot to do, prepare for tomorrow and gearing up for next week in service and more in-person learning. So I'd like to say building principals are welcome if they would like to retire for the evening.
Do you want them to retire before finance report or after?
They're welcome to retire now.
Okay. Okay. So Communications Committee report. Alice, you want to lead off on that? Do you have anything you wish to add to the minutes?
There's nothing more to add from our minutes. We're still moving along here, trying to effectively communicate.
Okay. And the Finance Committee has not met since the last meeting, am I correct?
No, our primary discussion at the Finance Committee was on the budget, and then we thoroughly discussed that last week right after our meeting. So you guys got the gist of that Finance meeting just by discussing the budget.
Okay. Facilities, I would assume is the same. Your last meeting was on the 11th. Is there anything else you wish to update? As moving forward, it seems like you won't be meeting until sometime in either March or April, am I correct?
That's correct. Update.
And policy?
Well, I can speak to policy. Yes, thank you. I can speak to policy a bit, and I'd ask Giuliano and Mary Ellen to join me as well. In addition to the policy work that we've done, moving policies forward that you'll see later this evening, I wanted to announce to the board and make the board aware that the policy committee had 2 Vermont Law School Schweitzer Fellow students join us at our last meeting. They're Ariel King in Jamison Davis. And they came to us with a purpose. As our district has been focusing on equity and looking to address equity, Mary Ellen and I asked Ariel and Jamison to join the policy committee to talk about their work, which is working with school districts and working with municipalities to help those entities develop an anti-racism policy. And this is a policy that would take input from the community. So it's very specific to the community's needs. And then to develop a policy that can then be brought forth in our regular policy procedure and process. It was very encouraging to have them there. I'll stop for a moment and ask if Giuliano wanted to add any information about that, or Mary Ellen.
Giuliano?
Yes, so when they were at our policy meeting, they presented what they did, and it was some really good information that they had for us, and the committee felt that it would be a really good idea to have them as consultants with their legal background to help develop a policy for the committee.
And Mary Ellen?
And I would like to add that they're also working with many other districts across Vermont. The Hartford district, there's a district in Windsor County that they're working on with now, the White River Valley Supervisory Union. So they have, those just some of them. So they have some experience, and they're very talented, passionate people who are committed to equity. And I think that at this time, as we enter into our work with our vision and design teams that will deal with equity, that it would be really, beneficial to us to have an equity policy to address anything that might come up in the future. So that's kind of the purpose ahead of it.
So as a question, are the intent is to draft a whole new policy in this area?
That's correct, Paul. But it's to involve community through a process that Jamison and Ariel have designed and have implemented in other districts to take input so that the draft policy for the board to consider would have the input of the Barre school community. And I think that's an important step through policy, because what I've learned through my investigation into the matter and in even talking with the School Boards Association, policy is a cornerstone for this type of work.
So any policies we have right now would be expanded? Is that a fair assessment?
No, I would say that this would be a complementary policy. It would not modify our existing policies, but it would be a complementary policy.
Okay, so really don't need the blessing of the board. I think any committee can bring in people to work with them. Otherwise, we would have to have meeting after meeting to approve people being allowed to go to committee. So I don't see a problem with Giuliano's committee bringing whoever to talk about such matters. Is that your assessment too, Giuliano?
Yes, and then once we go through that process and develop a policy, we would make our recommendation to bring it to the board.
That makes sense. Any questions pertinent to that?
Yes, I see Alice has a question.
Alice, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, it really isn't a question per se. It's a comment in that I really want to reinforce that this should really be part of the mission, vision, strategic plan piece, because I'm very concerned that we would be doing, here's mission, vision, strategic planning, putting together committees, teams, doing surveys, and then here's the equity piece, putting together teams, committees, and doing surveys, when the two of them should really be running together rather than parallel. because I really want to get the best information that we can. And if we overload our staff, our community, our parents, even our students with surveys, that it won't have any meaning. So as these young attorneys or attorneys to be are doing their work, that they are fully apprised of the fact that we have something else going on and they should be aware of that.
Thank you for that, Alice, and we will definitely keep that in consideration. There are some times when there are confidential issues that they might not want to bring up during like a policy mission vision meeting. So there might be sometimes we have to do a separate type of discussion to really be open and honest, about what is happening in the community. So thank you for that, but we will definitely work together as much as possible. Hopefully I'll be involved in that equity piece of the vision mission and bring it all together.
Okay, Giuliano, do you have any other policy thoughts with the number of policies that have been coming through your committee?
No, and it looks like Guy has a question.
Okay, Guy?
Yeah, Alice, thank you for bringing that up. When I asked, because they have been working with other school districts, when I asked whether we could basically duplicate any policies that they come up with, their answer was their work needs to reflect the community. And so I'm glad Alice brought up what she did, because that work somehow, you ought to be able to try to dovetail that somehow. And so maybe we can have that discussion at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Guy. All right, there's not, who's that? Tim?
Tim, yeah, what is all this assistance going to cost us?
Their consulting fee is $900.
Okay. So
which is covered by which is covered by our federal grant.
Okay, so it's not coming out of our budget, because it would be a sad day to cut a sports program and pay these yahoos. Is that correct?
That sounds correct, Tim.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing more in policy, curriculum meeting its next meeting is on January 26th. The agenda gone out for that, I didn't see that, but I assume it's coming out shortly. Has it gone out? Maybe it's just something I didn't print off.
Has not gone out yet, but it will come out shortly.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ellen. Appreciate that. Anything you want to comment on, Mary Ellen, about the curriculum and what your mission is going to be in that?
You mean what the focus will be for the next committee meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be addressing intervention services.
Okay.
That's the focus.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mary Ellen in that regard? Then we'll move on to, we won't have anything on negotiation committee at this time, because that meeting is yet to be determined. Regional Advisory Board will be meeting on February 8th. Is that still a go?
That is my understanding, Paul.
Okay. And then we're into 5.4. The financials are in your packet. Does anybody have any questions on the financials?
Paul, I don't have a question, but I have a question that doesn't relate to financials, and I apologize. I am reviewing the agenda and do not see reopening or anything to do with how we're delivering instruction on the agenda. Are we not discussing that tonight? Because I know there are people here who would like to talk about that and probably assumed it was on the agenda and didn't comment during public comment.
It wasn't put on the agenda for this week. We had the discussion last week, and we have another meeting at the end of the month. So I don't know. That should have been brought up in the early part to be put on the agenda.
I apologize. I didn't realize it was not on the agenda. So my apologies. I It's just been a standing item on the agenda. I assumed it would be on here as well.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
Each building would report out on it myself. Sorry to interrupt you, Sonia. This is Diane Solomon. I assumed each building report would provide that also, and it went through so quickly, I'm kind of surprised. So I would appreciate a quick update on the reopening from each building too.
Briefly, Dave, could you give us a quick summary?
Yes, I can give a quick summary. And, before I give the summary, under our recently adopted policy around modes of instruction, it asked that there be a monthly update on modes of instruction. The buildings are moving forward with their transition to in-person learning plans, getting transportation ready, getting classrooms ready, and preparing for an increased number of students. And all of that is posted on our school district in-person learning plan page, which is under the COVID-19 tab on the Unified Union School District page. And I can have a future update at another meeting, but as we spoke about last time, we are gearing up to be adding more students starting next week.
Has the state changed the 6-foot distancing requirement for the 7 through 12? Is that still the same?
That's right. That's still in place.
So until they do that, we're stuck with the space divided into the number of square feet we need for kids at 6 foot. Is that still a go?
That's right. That is factored into our plan.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions pertinent to that?
I have some.
Karen Day, let's start.
Okay, so I've been on here a few times regarding preschool busing. I realized that the preschool busing, their schedule is different. I am wondering again, what is the reasoning to not adding preschool busing, at least being able to be picked up? I was told last time that we couldn't do it because of Berry Town didn't have enough buses and we can't do something for Berry City and not Berry Town. But now Berry Town is using our buses. And yet my daughter is still not able to use the bus. And I emailed about this last Wednesday and only one I heard from was Hayden.
And what was the answer from Hayden, if you don't mind my
Hayden
asking?
said that he I mean, he's known all along my frustration, and he said that he pretty much couldn't speak on it, and it was up to Superintendent Wells. That the only thing that he could see as being an issue was being a different time, being dismissed from the big kids, which is fine. I'm literally just asking at least for her to be able to ride. Because like right now, I'm having to leave 2 kids in the car and run her to her teacher. And someone is still not coming down where they're supposed to bring her up when I was promised that a long time ago. I mean, things are just not being followed through with, and I'm getting sick of it, honestly.
Something to follow up on, David?
Hey, Paul, just one thing. The only thing that I can be aware of, I'm not transportation coordinator clearly. However, there are 5-point harnesses required for all preschool children. And that, of course, is not something that we're able to take off and put back on. Instead, those are permanently installed in the buses each year, not permanently, but put in each year given the number of students. So if we're then turning around that bus that now has a preschool seat and we don't have a preschooler to fill it, then we are unable to fill it with an older child. So that would leave a seat unable to be used on the bus.
Thank you, Victoria.
And Victoria, yes, that is helpful and part of the issue. We discussed this, also when we started our reopening in the fall, essentially, that with the needs of extra monitoring space with students to follow COVID safety guidelines, we did not have the capacity to have preschoolers on at that time, including staffing. And that's going to be exacerbated by increased ridership. But I will have checked with Mr. Kuhn to see that he follows up with Mrs. Day.
I mean, I get that, but in the same breath, you've been saying that since day one that we are going to have more kids and all this stuff, but yet this whole time there's been 7 kids on my kid's bus. And yet my daughter could easily, I mean, right now my 2 kids are in separate seats and there's 2 bus monitors on top of the bus driver. So you can't say that there's not enough people on the bus to adequately be able to cart a preschooler 2 times a day in the morning or 2 times a week. And not to mention, isn't a, you know, we pay taxes, which includes a fair and right education, which would be include transportation. And if I knew in the beginning of the year before, like a little bit more notice that there was gonna be no transportation, I probably wouldn't have put my daughter in it. And that's the frustrating part, is not being transparent with everyone and coming up with excuses instead of actually telling us.
Okay, I'm sorry that you're frustrated. You know, that is something that the preschool director let families know about the transportation. I realize that that's a frustration, but the administrators planning transportation with me feel that this is the way we need to do it at this time.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one.
All right.
Paul, I have one.
Yes, go ahead,
So,
Tim.
given that, you know, the state has been really, really slow to kind of change this six foot route thing, we just went to a new semester. Couldn't we warn the parents and say, this is probably not going to happen in this school year? And then that would give them the option to go ahead and pull their kids completely out of our school system and put them somewhere else where they can get an education. If teachers are already having their kids educated somewhere else, I think we owe our parents at least that much respect.
Thank you, Tim.
I'm not sure how we can step around these guidelines. If people really want to complain somewhere, it's really going to have to be in Montpelier.
Well, I don't want to complain, and we're not complaining, but we owe the parents enough respect to say, hey, we're not going to educate your kids the rest of the year. Why don't you go to school at Washington Central? Or why don't you go to school at U32? Or why don't you just homeschool the rest of the year? The point is that we've been hemming and hawing about this since September, and now we're into the second semester, and we've got kids that are about to graduate. So
I get your point, Tim, and I get everybody's frustration. But unfortunately, these things keep revolving, and there's no solid solution. We're not going to make, there are 3 different groups of people, some that don't want their kids to go back in school because of COVID, some that want to have the hybrid, and some that want to have full-time in person. You'd think in that kind of combination, you could come up with a solution, but this distancing stuff and these guidelines really, as modifying as they have become over every few weeks, there's a new set of standards coming out. Until those things change, we don't have.
But letting the parents transfer their kids out would be the answer to all that. To another school. I bet other schools would take them. Any school. Look, I can't get an education at Berry City. Can I go to school here?
I think at some point, those other schools, as you put it, if they're transferring to that point and they're doing that, they're going to run into the same problems we're running into. Space is going to become a problem.
You know,
it's a numbers game.
Well, you know,
one thing that's really tricky is, this is Chris Parker. I didn't sign my kids up for the virtual academy this year because I didn't want them to have a full year of online learning because they had so much of that in the spring. And I wish that from the beginning there was some transparency that if the 6-foot distance limit stayed in place, that it was impossible for grades 7 and 8 to come to school full time. And without that information, unfortunately, I did sign them up for in-person school. And now we're going into almost a full year that they've not been in school. And so that's the type of transparent information that would have been really helpful from the start to say, with the 6-foot guidance, we cannot have grades 7 and 8 in school more than 2 days a week. If I knew that at the beginning, I could have signed my kids up for a full virtual academy. Unfortunately, without that information, now we're stuck in this situation with no endpoint in sight. I think that's really hard for parents.
Granted. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Diane Solomon really quickly. I would task the reopening committee with looking at a swift change to the 6-foot distancing. Last week, Secretary French said after April vacation, he wants all kids back in school, which leads me to believe that that 6-foot distancing requirement might shift. And so I would wonder if the reopening team or committee will be looking at that, because it could come very quickly. And it's taken a long time to get to this point. And if that distancing rule changes, it would be great to think that our district could change along with it with expediency. Thank you.
Diane, just to respond to that, if Secretary French would like to give us a polite note to Mother here saying that that's going to actually happen, I think we certainly could start plotting in that course. But right now, we're at the whims of what comes out of Montpelier based upon scientific evidence that a lot of people even question. So as a school board sits here hearing these complaints week after week, we understand that we would love nothing better than have everything go back to the way it used to be, totally in person and so forth. But we're being told by these professionals in Montpelier that we got to follow these guidelines. If we don't, who's at risk and who's at fault? I don't have any answers. As a board chair, I don't have the answers.
Paul, I have a question though. My concern is that the 6-foot rule hasn't changed for this entire school year. And my second concern is that other high schools are doing this. I recognize that there are other schools like Montpelier, they're smaller than us. U32, it may be about the same size. They may have a larger footprint, so they have more square footage, and they're also doing it very differently. They have a week on and a week off. But I don't know what other larger schools in the state are doing. What is South Burlington doing? They have larger numbers than us. What is Burlington? Well, Burlington's not in school because they have other issues. What is CVU doing? What is MMU doing? They have larger numbers. Do they have that much more square footage that they're able to fit more kids in their building than us?
Do you know if they are actually there in person full time in those 5 other
I don't
large
know.
schools?
I don't know. I'm
My
asking.
understanding is that they're following the same guidelines we are, and in order to meet that, their square footage certainly comes into that, and they're dealing with issues like we are.
So their students are only going 2 mornings a week right now.
Some schools are rotating their schedules differently, but the time element is about the same. The spacing requirement is what really gets us. That's the key. If you know something more than what the administration that we've placed our trust in, we gave the superintendent the authority in one of our policies to handle situations based upon the science during a pandemic. We just passed that a few months ago. So if we're not going to listen to the superintendent and not going to listen to what the folks in Montpelier are saying, and if we're not really able to come up with a system that allows us to meet these guidelines better, then what's the point?
I'm not saying that we should disregard guidelines. I'm just saying we have been hoping for something to change, for something to give, and nothing. There has been no change since we started in September. And our 7th and 8th graders and our high schoolers are going to school basically 2 half days a week. I mean, that's it. And our 12th graders are going to graduate having been in school for 2 mornings a week and have to go to college next year. Our 8th graders are going to have to graduate and go to high school next year. I don't understand how we feel like this is the best that we can do. And I recognize that I probably complain about this more than anyone else on the board, but I feel like we are working really hard, but we are not doing the best job that we can do. So I'm going to continue to push. How can we do this better? Because this is not cutting it. We are getting emails from students. We're getting emails from parents, multiple people every single week. And I'm not saying the same person over and over. Different people every week are complaining about this. Is this happening across the Is this happening across the whole state? I don't know, because I don't have contact with other people. I would assume that David knows what's happening because he's in contact with other superintendents.
And that's precisely part of the discussion, is that David does know what's going on in a lot of these other districts. If you looked at U32 week on, week off, and you take the actual time that they actually have for classroom, it's equal to ours. We're just doing a few days each week instead of having a week on, week off. I mean,
I'd like to, just inject. There are fewer kids at U32. I think it's 486. 9 through 12. And so it's not apples to apples. And I think we get into trouble when we don't compare apples to apples. And I am so happy I am not a parent right now, because I can't imagine how frustrating this is. I mean, I can, because I hear it on a very regular basis. However,
hi, my name is Kara Irwin. I have a junior at Spalding.
Yeah, you're living under a rock.
We'll leave all the nasty commentary off, because we really don't need that in this public discourse. We're all trying to work through a problem, and it's not a happy problem. They did call it a pandemic, and when you have that kind of a terminology, it must be serious. And if it's serious, we need to look at this from a perspective. If we're going to follow the science, or if we're going to follow the state recommendations, Mel's right. We got to compare apples to apples. I asked the question at the last meeting, what are the other 5 large districts that are our size and larger doing? And some of the information I've gotten back already, they're dealing with the same sort of issues we are. It is a matter of space, it's a matter of distancing. And it's also the quality of education is dropping like a rock, and we understand that. Having students, go ahead.
Paul, could we just, for our next meeting, or perhaps publish on the website, just have a breakdown of exactly what other school districts are doing, so that way we can stop having this discussion meeting after meeting after meeting?
I agree.
Because I think it would just be easier to have all the data compiled in one place and have it published on our site, so that people can see differences and similarities.
My name is Kara Irwin, and I have a junior at Spalding. I just wanted to say that he has been an honor roll student, and he's gone from being an honor roll student to now actually failing honors chemistry and failing a college level literacy class. But I just wanted to say, as Barry taxpayer, we have plenty of buildings that are sitting empty in downtown, and Burlington has gone to thinking outside of the box with their environmental issues. And they were going to go into using the, Macy's building or something. Why? I mean, if it's a space issue, why haven't we looked at that?
It's more than a space issue. It's a personnel issue. It's also a maintenance issue. Every time we acquire some more buildings, there's going to be a maintenance factor in this world of COVID. And we don't have the personnel. And then the other thing is, right now, we're barely hanging on, having the kinds of teachers available to teach these courses. So we're in a rock and a hard place situation, and I would love to see some real out-of-the-box solutions if they're out there. I would love to have the head of the AOE, Jeff Francis, come and talk to us about this personally and say, okay, we can change some things and show us a different light. But that hasn't happened yet. I'm sorry to sound negative, folks, but we've been getting pounded with this, and there's no one on this board that doesn't feel desperate at this point to try to see this thing start to go away. We've had a spike in COVID in Vermont that in the last week alone was greater than all the previous months that we had since this thing started. So what does that tell you? Right now we're opening and closing schools because we're getting positives in our schools. This is ongoing and it hasn't changed until we get through maybe the vaccines or something, but that's where we are. And we hear this not just in this medium at a board level, but we're hearing this from our public constituents, and everybody is frustrated, including the board members. We don't know what else to say.
Paul, if I can add, on the topic, in some of these things that we have discussed already, certainly the reopening team will address our plans and our parameters should the state change the 6-foot distancing rule for middle high school students. That's why we changed our plan for elementary grade students when they made that possible and variable. And yes, Secretary French did say that the state's expectation, or hope rather, is that schools would be returning to in-person learning after April vacation. And he also said, if parameters permitted, I would encourage people to do two things. Again, to look at the full plan on our district webpage that is really clear about what we're doing and when we're doing it. And also, too, I have received the concerned emails from parents as well, as you were saying, Paul, some with concerns that there was not enough in-person learning, and then others who say that reopening school is a mistake and the district should reverse course, but we need to move forward. And I've encouraged some parents to speak with Mrs. Waterhouse, particularly about concerns about their high schooler, and she is open to that. And I think that's a good way to leave the issue at this point, given the information that we have now.
Thank you. Didn't want to belabor this point tonight, but since Sonia, since you brought it up and we have people here, we can at least talk about it one more time until some of these guidelines change. All right, let's move on to the enrollment under 5.5. Is that still in that area? Because we moved a couple things around.
Enrollment was in the central office report. So okay. we are at current business 6.1 in policies.
Thank you. I remember you saying that now. Thank you. Current business, first reading of firearms, C5.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I have one quick question about busing with preschoolers. You said that there's not enough space on these buses. The pre-K class is already staying the 2 days. So you're only talking about half the kids being split on these buses on those 2 days a week. How many of those kids are actually riding the bus?
So to answer that question before we move on, it's space, but it's also staffing. The bus riders or bus monitors who are on the bus also have the responsibilities of doing the COVID screenings and checks with the K through 8 students on the bus. So there's that responsibility. Some space taken up by leaving space between students and the driver for COVID safety. And it is unfortunate that we're not transporting preschoolers this year. We were upfront about it in the beginning and called the families, and we hope to reinstitute it next year.
But you're saying that there's too many, like I'm a little bit confused. This is, forget age. How many, realistically, how many kids split between however many buses? What is it, 1, 2, maybe 3 preschoolers on a bus that would be extra? Like, you're saying numbers, and if you break it down, the preschool population divided by like 8 buses, and you're only talking about half of it because they would only be going the first 2 days, like Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday.
Right. I understand. It's not just a matter of numbers and the number of riders on the bus. The reopening committee looked at this really carefully in the fall before we started, along with our preschool director and with our transportation coordinators and with the manager of our transportation company, STA. And the concern is the capacity to monitor the other students, again, with the additional sanitation, screening questions, temperature taking. So that's one concern. And the other concern is the close proximity support that preschoolers needed. And that's why the committee felt at this time for this year, under COVID restrictions, we weren't able to transport preschoolers.
Why we get start with one?
Okay. So moving on to current business. Juliana, if you can weigh in on some of these from the policy committee. We have the first reading of the firearms C5 for required action. Could you give us a quick overview of that? Is Juliana online?
Let's see, he must be. Yes, Juliana is here.
Juliana, did you hear my question?
I didn't, Paul. My connection was a little screwed up. So can you repeat that, please?
Yes. Could you give us an overview on each of these policies as we go through them from the policy committee perspective? We're at 6.1, which is the first reading of firearms C5. It says required action.
Yeah, this one was pretty cut and dry and moved through the committee pretty quickly. There was nothing really changed on it. So what is written is pretty much what the board needs to consider.
Any questions from the board members pertinent to this particular policy?
Paul, I have one question. It's Victoria.
Yes.
I have a major problem with the implementation being removed. The idea that, here it's saying an expulsion hearing conducted under this policy shall afford due process as required by law, developed by the superintendent or his or her designee. The superintendent shall refer appropriate law enforcement agency and so on. Oh, why is that being removed? Because certainly that seems as though that's the board directing the superintendent as to what should be happening in the procedure.
Victoria, when law enforcement's brought into it, that's who handles that part of the, so it wouldn't be part of the policy anymore because law enforcement comes in and takes care of that.
And to answer that a little bit further, Victoria, when we had such a hearing, and Guy, you were part of that, and Tim was as well. When law enforcement takes over a particular investigation in a situation like this, they control it from that point on. That's basically what we were told by our attorneys.
Right, but what I'm saying is, in this policy, it doesn't say anything about referring it to law enforcement. So the idea that a student would bring a weapon to school, based upon this policy, there's no requirement for our superintendent to contact law enforcement. I find that a little concerning.
Right, and Victoria, another part of the answer, and Giuliano, chime in here, please, if you'd like, is that the policy committee has been removing procedures from policy, and I think this could have been part of a policy committee update that the committee discussed, having changing the formatting of our policy page so that procedures that would accompany a policy are listed hand in hand with them. But you're absolutely right, Victoria. The aspects of the implementation that would have me as superintendent take action for safety of the students would be part of procedures.
But procedures are something that the board doesn't vote on. So I'll just say I have a major objection to removing this.
Is that something, Juliana, you want to take back to the committee, or do you feel the committee feels that the recommendation is still solid?
Well, I mean, what we can do right now procedurally is have the board vote on it, and if the board doesn't approve it, it would go back to policy.
Agreed. Do we have a motion to approve this particular firearms reading?
So moved, Paul.
Is there a second? Second by Mel. Any further discussion?
Paul, the only other thing I would say about the procedure piece is that I understand that to some people it might be frustrating, but that is an agreement that we had, number one. Number two is I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we follow up at the procedures are there. And so, when we do this, we need to remember as board members that let's make sure that we follow up on the written procedure. And I think we've been pretty good about trying to do that at policy committee.
Any other questions? Normally, this is usually referred to as an immediate expulsion hearing in which the board all participates. We become the judge and jury in that. Whenever you have any kind of firearms violation. That's the way it had been at the high school for a number of years. Guy, Tim, do you disagree with that?
No. Nope.
Okay. I don't know if that answers your question, Victoria.
Well, but
we can.
Paul, to your point right there, it just removed the mandatory expulsion hearing. If we vote yes on this policy, we're removing that mandatory expulsion hearing.
So would you want to make a change to this motion, ask that it be referred back to the policy committee for the purpose of modifying it, or are you making a recommendation to leave that in there?
The motion stands and board members need to vote yes or no.
Okay. All right, then I will call the roll if there's no other questions. All those in favor, thumbs up. I will call off the names as I see them. Guy is an aye. Tim is an aye. Emel is an aye. Sonia's a no. Alice is an aye. Victoria?
I am a nay.
No, 2 no's. Gina? Do I hear Gina? All right, and I am an aye. Is there any board member I missed? Giuliano, did I?
Aye.
You're an aye. So we have 6.
Paul, I didn't catch Gina's vote.
Gina did not vote.
It appears Gina has stepped away.
Okay.
So right now it's 6-2 aye. This is a first reading, and if you feel strong enough about this, maybe those of you who want to contact the policy committee could relook at this again and see if they can give you a more solid reason as to why. The next one is the first reading English learners. This is C4 required. Giuliano, give us an overview quickly.
So this policy came to the board once before, and then Sonia had some concerns about it, and it was brought back to the policy committee to explain the English language learners, what that meant. So that's back to the board now.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this first reading?
So moved.
Moved by Mel, is there a second?
Second, Guy.
Second by Guy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the first reading, the English learners, signify by saying aye. Thumbs up, please. We got Alice. We have Tim. Guy, I think your thumb is up. Yamal, Sonia, Victoria.
Victoria, aye.
Giuliano.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Is Gina online? Okay. 8-0. One absent. Moving on to the next one, first reading of electronic communications between employees and students. This is B8. Giuliano, could you give us an overview from the policy?
And Paul, if I could interrupt before we do that, just to make the board aware that a copy of this policy with corrections for formatting was included in the addendum.
Was that wasn't tonight's addendum, that was a previous addendum.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, Giuliano?
So once again, this one's pretty much straightforward with the procedures being removed and definitions added.
Okay. Motion to approve the first reading?
So moved. Sonia.
Moved by Sonia, second by whom? Alice? Any
Yes, I'll second
discussion?
it.
I'd like to make an amendment to or make a small, because when we changed the formatting, there was that weird reference to like number 5, Roman numeral 5, blah, blah, blah. So on page 2, it says number 2 procedures, and it says see 1 and 2 below, but the 1 and 2 below, right below that are enforcement responsibilities, and that's not what that's referring to. I think it's referring to reporting to 1 and 2 of reporting to other agencies. So can we just see 1 and 2 below under reporting to other agencies so that that's clear? It doesn't change because we took out Roman numerals, there's no way to designate a section other than by calling it what it is.
Is the board all right with that? Or David, do you have a commentary on that?
Before I have a commentary, I just want to check the VSBA model policy. It'll take me just a moment to do that.
Well, this was the policy that we discussed last week that I asked to,
right.
And so it's referring to, I believe it's section 4, 1 and 2. And when Tina put it in, she just changed it to say C1 and 2, but then below, but there's a 1 and 2 below that don't really refer to the handling of reports.
So Sonia, I'm looking at the model policy on the VSBA website. So they have, excuse me, they have procedures. The superintendent shall develop procedures for both the receipt and handling of reports filed under this policy. See Roman numeral 4A and B below. And then in the model policy, Roman numeral 4 is enforcement responsibilities, and Roman numeral 4A is student communications violations of this policy, and Roman numeral 4B is employee communications violation of this policy. And I was thinking, I'm flipping back, that
Okay.
it aligned.
Then that is 1 and 2 below. I thought it referred to the section that didn't exist. I apologize.
No, that's quite all right. It took a lot of back and forth checking with Tina and myself.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead.
So just scratch what I just said. Sorry. The 1 and 2 below is exactly what it should refer to.
Okay. Any other discussion on this one? Then thumbs up if you agree to adopt this as first reading. Alice's thumbs up. Jim's thumbs up. Guy's thumbs up. Emel's thumbs up. I believe Sonia was.
I am an I, Victoria, and Gina has had to step away.
Okay, and I'm an I. So we have 8, 0, and 1 absence. Moving on to 6.4, first reading, prevention of sexual harassment as prohibited by Title IX. This is C12 and is required in action. Giuliano, do you want to give us the overview from the committee?
So this policy was supposed to be, we weren't really supposed to add or touch it in any way. It was the way it was submitted is the way we were supposed to approve it. But I know there are some concerns with it, and I think the only thing that we should really do is kind of tackle those one by one.
The other thing I would add is that I know some of the concerns was that this policy brings forth a lot of procedures that need to be put in place, appointing of people who would investigate, appointing of people who would decide, changes to handbooks, etc., which would be the next action after the board, what if the board approves or disapproves this policy.
Any questions on that? Excuse me. Yes, Alice.
When you say we can't make, and this is just really for understanding, not to argue with the policy or anything, who says we can't change it?
Law.
So it is the strong recommendation of the VSBA, who developed this model policy, actually with our lawyers, Pietro and Heather Lynn of Lynn and Lynn Law. So they developed this policy, and Title IX, as people have mentioned, is quite complex. But it is a strong recommendation of the VSBA and the policy committee that we not amend it because of its complexity.
Did this come from the Agency of Ed weighing in on this?
Boy, no, it's not. Well, it's not from Vermont statute. It may be from federal statute, Giuliano. I don't know if you remember that part, but
Yes.
it is, yeah, from federal statute. Yes.
Okay, motion to approve this? We already had that, and who was the person who approved that? I mean, motioned that? Or do we have the motion yet? I'm sorry.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. May I have a motion? IML, is there a second?
I'll second. Guy.
My guy. Is there any further discussion?
So I have, as I submitted, a lot of questions, and a lot of my concerns are about the fact that there are a lot of implementation and procedures that need to happen once we pass this. My other concern, which is a broader concern, is it talks about the prevention of sexual harassment, and I would ask each one of you to name one thing in this policy that talks about the prevention of sexual harassment. There's nothing in this policy about preventing sexual harassment. It's about how things can get reported. It's about how people can go about having fair hearings. There's nothing in here about prevention. This policy is really just, basically steamrolling from the federal government and the Department of Education, in my opinion. And I think until we have implementation and procedures in place, that we shouldn't pass it. I won't support it because I think there are too many loopholes. And I think we need to have, if we are really going to say that we are going to work on the prevention of sexual harassment, then we need to have something that says we're going to do that. This is not the policy that actually says that.
Anybody else share that? Now, I just asked the final question, is this something that we can't change, or can it be modified? Can it be enhanced? Let's put it that way.
Paul,
I think the only other way to do that is to create more like an addendum to this, a backup. We can't touch this one, so we'll have to add our own that goes along with it.
My understanding is you can expand these things, but you can't delineate any of it. Am I correct?
No, it wouldn't be like it wouldn't be listed as C12. It would be something C12A or something like that. I don't think we can, it is what it is. And if we want to go further, we're going to have to develop something.
Yeah, that was exactly my point. You can add to it going further, of course, under this same policy, but you can't delineate any of that's existing right now on this policy.
Paul, this is Guy.
Sure.
I think the evening we discussed this, I think John Giacomo was there. If I remember correctly, his recommendation is that nothing be changed, and not only his recommendation, but based on his experience in utilizing this policy with the schools that he's worked with. So that's just a comment. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying what the legal person that sits on a committee said.
Okay, this is the first reading. Sonia, maybe you might want to talk to your brother-in-law and get his take.
No, because first of all, I'm not going to argue with John about a policy. We argue about plenty of other things. But my concern isn't that we should change the policy, because I don't think that we can or we should, because that gets us into even more hot water. I think my biggest concern is that there are no procedures in place right now, and codes of conduct that address this. I know we have codes of conduct. There's nothing that specifically addresses some of the gray areas or the loopholes, or the things that were just completely missed in the policy. And I recognize that I like to ask a lot of questions, but I also did a lot of work on reading this, and I think you can see that by the number of questions that I had. And when I got Luke's reply back, there were a lot of answers that were basically implementation procedures have not been established. Implementation procedures have not been established. We have to outline procedures in the handbook. So it seems to me that we can pass this, and then I would like some assurance that implementation procedures and procedures in the handbook are going to be addressed in a timely manner.
So Sonia, when Luke gets these policies initially, he starts that. So as we go through the policy, he's already working on those procedures. He mentioned this during our meeting that that's his process.
Would we be able to get a copy of the work in progress as far as the procedures that Luke is working on? And I'm going to go to Mary Ellen shortly. Giuliano?
Yes, I'll ask Luke to provide that.
I think that would be helpful. Mary Ellen?
I just wanted to reiterate something I heard someone say in this meeting already, and from my past experience of leading the policy committees in previous supervisory unions, that normally you approve the policy first and then you develop the procedures. So the first step would be to approve the policy.
Yeah, I quite agree, but I think to allay Sonia's concerns, if we have some idea of what those procedures might look like, in the second reading, there'll be more confidence of approving this. Is that a fair statement, Sonia?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Because we will approve this for the first reading, and then we have the second reading. All right. If there are no more questions, those in favor of approving the first reading, put your thumbs up, please. I got Emel. I got Guy, thumbs up. Alice, Giuliano, is that an aye? Victoria?
Aye.
Sonia, her thumb is down, and I'll vote aye. Alice, did I call on you? That's an aye. Did I miss anybody? Gina's the only one that is not online with us. Is that still correct, Victoria?
Correct.
Okay. So we got 7-1, it's first reading, and if Luke can provide that information to you, Giuliano, and that can be provided to the board, maybe Sonia can support this later. Thank you. Moving on to under the old business, which is the next item, we have the FY22 budget and annual meeting warnings. Is it a warning now instead of warnings? Because this all seems to be in one document now. Is that correct, David?
That's right. It's on one document, and I want to pull up something that the board needs to consider first. So just one moment. Okay. Sonia had shared this with the board previously, so it's something that we will need to take action on tonight in response to this item. And it is there is Vermont Act 162, which is a temporary act that during the pandemic allows school districts that normally vote on the floor at annual meetings to do this by Australian ballot. The board tonight would need to vote to enact this. So a sample motion could be pursuant to Act 162 of 2020. I move to conduct the BUUSD district's 2021 annual meeting using the Australian ballot voting method for all articles. We would need to move on that, and then the board could move to approve this single warning.
Paul, I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second? Emil, I still saw your hand go up, and also Alice, who both seconded. Any discussion?
Paul, I said it on the meeting yesterday, and I know you had asked a question about whether we could, move this to another location, and the answer was we could, but they don't recommend that we do that for a lot of reasons. One is, obviously because of COVID and spacing and that type of thing. And the other thing is we couldn't guarantee that all voters could weigh in. So for example, if you held it at a place where you could only have 50 people, that would be denying the right for other potential people that, that might want to show up. So, so they recommended that we do the Australian ballot.
Are you talking absentee ballots, or are you talking Australian ballot?
Just to put the warning on the Australian ballot.
Okay.
Now, we can have an information meeting about the budget, and that can be done virtually. Right. Nobody is voting. So, because I know at our annual meeting, lots of times we've had some, some information pieces. So just a clarification. I mean, I've got some other issues with this, but we'll talk about it later.
Okay. All right, yeah, and that's one of the things that's going to be on our upcoming BCA meeting as well. Okay.
Paul, I would also add, to help in the discussion, that Act 162 for this year waives the requirements that candidates wishing to be on the ballot for these positions get signatures. That would this year not be required.
Yeah. That's been well advertised, yeah. Okay.
But to add to that, while there aren't required signatures, people who want to run, and by the way, we have 4 seats that are up, so people who are online here listening, you need to sign a consent form. And I believe that has to be signed by January 21st, although there may be a little bit of leeway between town clerks. But if you want your name on the ballot for any of these positions, you need at minimum to sign a consent form.
Actually, Guy, I'm going to change your date on you. It's supposed to be January 18th, but it's a holiday, so it's January 19th. Okay.
I actually thought it was later because we're school board. That's the whole discussion that we had last week, that our nominating petitions don't line up with everybody else's, and that's why Carol had asked us to have this conversation. Go ahead, David.
Yes. I attended a webinar presented by the VSBA yesterday, and I heard the date that it was the 6th Monday before the budget meeting or town meeting, which would put it to January 25th. And I did ask our law firm if we are able to change anything in our article agreements to change those dates, but I was told that it's in statute and that we cannot.
So what is the official date? I've heard 18th, 19th, 21st, and 25th. What do we got?
It's the 6 Mondays before. It's the 25th.
That's what the statutes say.
That's the statute. That's when you have to have normally your petitions and your consent form, but now it's just the consent form.
Okay. Everybody got that? So,
January 25th. Mm-hmm.
Take a motion. Guy, we're both wrong. Motion to approve this?
So
Do I have a
moved,
motion?
Alice.
Alice moves. Second? Is there a second? Second by Mel.
What are we voting on? I thought we already had a motion.
Yeah, Paul, you already have a motion for the motion to start doing things by Australian ballot for this year only based on Act 162, and you haven't voted on that yet.
Okay, who made the original motion? I guess I'm trying to.
Seconded by Mel.
All right, so I'm sorry. There's a lot of sidebar discussion. I rely on the secretary and others to keep me straight. Okay, all those in favor? Thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Victoria?
I am an I, and Gina is still unavailable.
And Giuliano, I don't see you.
Aye.
Okay, so I guess it's 8. It passes. Now we come to the actual warning. Everybody had an opportunity to read the March 2nd warning?
Make a motion, we approve the warning.
I'll second that, Victoria.
Seconded by Victoria. Any discussion?
The only thing I would like to discuss is what Guy just brought up, and that's that it is my understanding there are going to be 2 open seats for Barry Town and 2 open seats for Barry City, which means there will be 4 new to us, potentially school board members. And I would encourage anybody who's on the call who has any interest, if you want to know more about it, then please contact one of us. We can tell you all about it. Maybe contact someone who's staying rather than someone who's leaving. And
that's a little biased.
What?
I said that's a little biased.
Well, because the people who are leaving might not have, like, they might have a different sort of take on the school board than the people who are staying. So, or maybe you could contact multiple people, but I would encourage people to consider running for school board because we will have 2 seats in Berry City and 2 seats in Berry Town.
Okay. All right.
Paul, the other thing, I don't know, this is a minor concern, but if, for example, there will have to be a moderator listed on the ballot, or if there isn't, there could be write-in votes, but they'll have to be named for each one of those positions on the warning. So we need to get people to run for those particular positions as well.
Yes. Any other thoughts?
And yes, just to let you know that Tina has already contacted our usual moderator to let him know this change so that he could express interest if he wants to be on the ballot.
And that was Tom Koch?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. I spoke with him today, but I never asked the question. And is Carol Dawes been contacted? Is she willing to stay in that same capacity?
We haven't asked her, but we certainly will.
And in the town of Barry, Donna Kelty is retiring in May, so it doesn't mean she can't stay on, but nonetheless, someone should contact her. Guy, you want to talk to her?
Sure, I can, yeah.
Okay, just to get the ball rolling so we don't forget. Okay, all those in favor of this warning, do we have a motion on it, first of all? Did I miss that?
Yes, the motion is open on the floor.
Make a motion to approve the warning.
We have the motion.
Oh, we do? It's on the floor, sorry, okay. All right, all those in favor, thumbs up, please. Guy, Jim, Yamel, Sonia, Alice, who am I missing? Giuliano, is that an aye? Victoria, is that an aye?
Victoria, aye.
I'm an aye, and Gina's still not on, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, then we have 8 supported this and it passes.
So Paul, the other thing in regards to the wording is we probably should have a discussion at some point as to whether we want ballots mailed out. There is money available to pay for this, but unfortunately, it's a lot of work. So, we probably should have that discussion at some point, because if we're going to do it that way, then we certainly owe it to our town clerks to let them know that's what we'd like to do.
My understanding, guys, that my understanding is that the city council is not doing that. That if people request absentee ballots to be typical as is, and since we are joined at the hip for both communities, we probably, and I think the Barry Town Select Board is doing the same. So I don't know if that's something we can.
I think what the guidance was yesterday is that make sure we coordinate, but it's up to us to decide whether we want that or not. I mean, if I understand it correctly, maybe I heard it wrong, David, we could request that ballots be mailed out, and the towns could request that they not be mailed out. But this is our annual meeting. This is our meeting. So we have a right to ask which way or the other. I'm not saying I'm in favor of one or the other, because certainly mailing out ballots is, while it's going to be paid for, is a lot of work. But certainly it gets it out to all the voters. So
My understanding is also the clerks don't really want to do this either for the reasons you just stated. But okay, I don't know. If that's a separate and apart issue, do you want to take that up right now?
well, we don't exactly need to do it tonight, but I think we need to make a decision probably by our next meeting. But I would say that to give everybody a heads up as soon as possible, which way we want to do it.
Well, since Berry City is commingled, they vote on their municipal budget and the school budget at the same time. I don't want to create any more difficulty for the city than is necessary. And I think because Barry Town's its municipal meeting is in May, that's not so much an issue there, but we still have a conjoined BUUSD budget that we're voting on, articles that are being warned. I would probably be against that for that reason, because I think you got to be fair to both communities.
Excuse me, Paul, I was looking for my unmute button just to add some information. Tina and I had a conversation with Carol and Donna about their preferences on this, and Guy is right, the board can decide what it wants to do about this. The town clerks would prefer to send a postcard, and I just, for your information, wanted to let you know that Carol has contacted a printing service and is going to get examples of postcards that can be sent out to every voter so they would know how to request a ballot.
I believe that was happening also in the town of Barry. The select board also were going to send out postcards. Okay, to be revisited. Moving on, since the warning's been approved, move to the second and final reading of the non-discrimination A22, which is recommended. Giuliano, can I get you back online for this? I lost Giuliano.
No, Giuliano is here. He's online.
Giuliano, did you hear the question? Okay, until I get Giuliano back online, can I have a motion to approve and a second so we can have discussion?
So moved, Alice.
Is there a second?
Second, Sonia.
Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, those in favor of this second reading and final reading signify by aye by putting thumbs up, and I'll call the names. Guy, I can't see your thumb. Okay, I see it now. Tim? Tim's an aye. Sonia's an aye. Alice is an aye. Emel's an aye. Victoria?
Aye.
Do we have Gina? Giuliano?
Still not present.
Giuliano? I have no indication from the chair. So I got 7 ayes and 2 abstentions from the vote. This passes. Second and final reading of the employee. Yes.
Hey, Paul, can you back up for a second? Who are the abstentions?
At this point, it'd be Giuliano not present and Gina not present at that moment.
Okay, so those are not abstentions because an abstention must be a conscious decision not to vote.
Yes, you're right.
So we will mark this as unanimous, and I will mark that there are 2 individuals who are not present for the vote.
Thank you for the correction. The next one is the second and final reading of employee unlawful harassment. This is B5, required, and it requires action. Is Giuliano joined us yet?
No, I see his image that he's on the meeting, but I don't hear from him, and he had said that he was having internet problems.
Okay, then I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved, Sonia.
Second?
Second, Alice.
Second by Alice. Any discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor, thumbs up, please. Sonia, Alice, Emel, Guy, Tim, Victoria.
Aye.
Giuliano, is he giving you a thumbs up, David?
No, there's no image. It's just his cover image. I don't see his video.
Same passes by 7 votes, same as before. Andrea, recorded the same way. Then we have the second and final reading, homeless students, C13, required and also requires action. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Alice.
Is there a second?
Second, Sonia.
Second by Sonia. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, thumbs up, please. Alice, Sonia, Emel, Guy, Tim, myself, Victoria.
Aye.
7, and we would be the same sort of vote as we had before. It passes. We're down to vision, mission, and strategic goals. Do we have anything to report on that?
I do. The design team met last week for the first time, and we, each person that's representing a stakeholder group is trying to recruit people for the first stakeholder feedback forum. So that is already in process. We have our next meeting next week, and we're moving along.
Will this all be online, or is this distancing meeting space?
It's all by Zoom or Google Meets, whatever we're doing.
Google Meet.
Yeah,
Right.
virtual. It's all virtual. And
Okay.
I'm not sure if the meetings, I think they're recorded, and I don't know if they're posted somewhere, but I can find that out and let you know.
That'd be good. Thank you. We're at number 8 on the agenda, which is roundtable.
Paul?
Yes.
You had added, based on request from a board member, agenda item 6.6, which was administrator evaluations. And we did not speak about anything. I know there might have been, if I heard quickly, a brief overview under the superintendent's report maybe, but I'm not sure if that satisfied what was being requested. We were asked to add an agenda item, and I don't know if we need any discussion on that agenda item, so.
My understanding, Andrea, is it was covered under the superintendent's report by his request, and I moved it up to that area. And it was covered underneath 5.1 in the central office report.
Okay,
I
so
thought that
no,
only enrollment was moved there. Well, that's so, I guess I'll add on to the superintendent's report then. I have a major concern if we're only finding out about evaluations in February, given that March 2nd, 3rd, whatever date it is, will no longer be the same board. So the same board who's been here for a year should be the ones who are in charge of evaluations, which are
Agreed.
normally sent out in December. So I'm a little concerned with it being discussed in the beginning of February.
And Victoria, we can put that as an agenda item where I can update the board at our 2nd January meeting.
Update us as to what exactly? How evaluations are being done, or that they've already been sent out, or what exactly?
That's right. Update you on the procedure and let you know what will occur in February.
Okay, thank you.
What I will follow up on Victoria's concern is that if there's a procedure and we're just getting underway on that, that means that evaluation process won't be completed to the end of February. And you'll have 4 distinct board members that have been involved here that will no longer be able to weigh in on that.
I understand. I'll have that prepared for our next meeting.
Okay. So the evaluations will have been completed by the next meeting, or?
No, they'll be completed for February before the March deadline.
Okay, so do we have a date certain in February where we're going to have the actual evaluations? I guess that's the question. Is that right, Victoria?
Fair enough, yes.
Yep, and we could have those by the first regular meeting in February.
Does that help you out, Andrea, as far as that discussion point?
yeah, and I can add it. I don't know if I should put part of it under. The problem is we agreed to add, the board agreed and voted to add a 6.6 and a 5.5. So if we just start throwing discussions here, there, and everywhere, we're really violating our agenda. So I don't know. I mean, if you want me to backtrack and put the discussion we're having now under the superintendent's report, or if we should, as the board voted, document information under 6.6 and the enrollment report under 5.5.
Oversight by the board, we just backtracked to evaluation, and we just set up a time which we're going to have the evaluations of the first meeting in February. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Go ahead, Sonia.
Can I ask a question? Are we doing a superintendent evaluation as well?
This should have been all done in January, I guess is the way to look at it. And we're right now trying to race to catch up.
So it's still January. We still have time. Can we get that done before the departing board members leave? Because it's really difficult. I've tried to do a superintendent evaluation with new board members. It doesn't go well. So if we can get a superintendent evaluation done, I'm assuming, David, that Tina has those documents. Would you like me to get in touch with her to ask her to send them out?
No, not necessary. And I would like to add to the 1st January agenda superintendent's goals, which also have not been reviewed by the board. So we would take care of those as well.
Are you saying February or January?
Oh, sorry. We can do that by the next regular meeting this month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Welcome back, Gina. We're going to get to the roundtable now, and I'm going to start by what I see pictorially on my screen. Guy, we're in the roundtable. Do you have anything you wish to say?
Just a couple things. Certainly appreciated the the comments that we received from the 2 students. I thought they were very thoughtful, very well thought out. So appreciate that. The other thing is, I feel badly about well, first of all, I'm not on social media a whole lot, so I'm just going to preempt this. But I felt badly that at least the teachers that testified at our last meeting were feeling really dumped on. I haven't seen those comments, and I feel badly about that. And I guess my advice is we probably should stay off social media. Period. Amen. I think it's just served to really not be a good thing. I hate to say it. And people are hiding behind comments. And but anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Guy. Tim, roundtable.
Yeah, I'm starting to get some stories from students where teachers are beginning to vocalize their concern or lack of interest of having the seniors return, the high schoolers return to school. It just doesn't bode well. And if you had an employee and you told them how much you didn't like them or didn't want them there, it's not a good thing. So I imagine venting your frustration with life to high schoolers is not appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Emil?
Well, I'm not really sure where to start. This has been I guess I'd say a trying week. I think it's been a trying week for everybody in various ways. And I'm saddened to see how things come to roost on school districts.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And I'm really sad to see just how angry everybody is. And I feel for the teachers. I agree with Guy that this may not be the right time to be using social media if that's what's really going on. And I worry that we won't always have all the information before we speak or before we write or communicate.
Thank you, Mel. Mel, I will say this. First time I met you was when we appointed you, and it's coming up on a year now. We have not met formally. We have not sat together, and it's been a very trying week, but also a very trying year.
Oh my God.
Many people can say they've gone through that kind of experience and not sit with their colleagues.
Right.
Next, I have Sonia.
So my questions I sent out to the full board regarding the closing of BCEMS today. And I was just wondering, David, if you could address those questions. I know you sent the protocol out about closing schools. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that protocol specifically. It looks like you contact the Department of Health. Do they make a recommendation as to whether we should close schools?
Okay, yes. So to answer your question regarding closing Barry City School for today, or actually moving it to remote learning, which, by the way, with updates from Mr. Hennessy and Mr. Kuhn, went seamlessly. So it was good that we had those plans prepared. So just briefly, we found out last evening that we had an individual in the school community who had found out that day that their test was positive. And then following the procedure, we did meet with Leslie Babick, who's filling in for a COVID coordinator, and her role is to coordinate communication with the Department of Health. And then the nurse from that building and the principals from that building. And we would also meet with any other supervisors of that individual. So sometimes it's the building principal, sometimes there's an additional supervisor of an individual if it's an employee. And we went through our timeline and facts and also contacted the Department of Health. We did not hear from the Department of Health last evening, despite our calls and emails to all of the contact points. We were contacted by the Department of Health a little over 12 hours later. And that's a reflection of Vermont having 300 or so COVID cases per day. But we, as a group, looked at the facts of where this individual was, and looking at the guidelines from the state that close contact means being within 6 feet of someone, whether you're masked or unmasked, for 15 minutes or more. And going through our timeline of what had happened and where the individual was, we realized that we would have multiple key staff members who would need to quarantine until we had definitive guidance from the Department of Health, and that we would not be able to run the school. So it's each of these I'm finding is a unique situation. It wasn't part of your question, but another example of a positive COVID event in the district was a COVID event at Barry Town, where an individual in the school community was positive, and then finding out the nature of where that individual was, would they have had close contacts, we found, and then it was confirmed by the Department of Health that there was no need to even contact trace in that situation. So each of these are unique. But with the Barry Town, in reviewing it with the administration, with the school nurse, and using all of the guidance that we had, and not being able to hear from the Department of Health because of their workload, we needed to move to remote for the day. And this communication has gone out to the community. Subsequently, we were able to talk with the Department of Health, and they narrowed down the contact tracing to a much smaller number, which allows us to be back in operation tomorrow.
So
Thank you, Dave.
can I just, I have two more questions and I want to make sure they get answered. Were the staff members that, or the people that were in close contact, were they all over the school, or were they just in like one particular grade? Were they, you know, elementary versus, I'm just trying to understand why we had to shut down a whole school again.
Right. They were key staff members who function in multiple aspects of the school. And I don't want to identify, you know, who might have been close contact with an individual, but just, you know, I'm asking the board to trust the judgment of myself and the team that met to review this, that with the school administration and nurse and COVID coordination, we felt that there were enough key individuals who were potential close contacts that we wouldn't be able to run the school the next day.
Okay, so is it the assumption that if they were not key contacts, we would only, you know, shut down a certain grade or certain grade level, number of grades, elementary versus middle school? Is that our intention going forward?
That's right. You know, the example of Barry Town, where given the situation, there was no need to close anything. Another example is the COVID case at the Career Center, where we closed down one program. So in the same building, but we closed down one program, moved it to remote learning, and kept the other part of the building operational because the information that we have, we, as I've mentioned before, have line lists where we keep track of where individuals are. And in that Career Center case, there wouldn't have been any crossing or extremely minimal crossing that wouldn't have met the threshold of 15 minutes close contact with a positive individual.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
David, just to follow up on that, it's really situational. Until you get more accurate information, you do the best what you can, and as you get more information, then you can start reversing course. Am I correct?
That's correct. And I would imagine, and I'm not pointing any fingers at the Department of Health, but I would imagine that, you know, if we had had to call them on January 4th, we probably would have gotten a quick call back. But now that they're dealing with 300 cases a day, it took them longer. Nobody asked, but I wanted to announce, I found out today, and I'll publish this, that I'm going to forget her name. We have a doctor from the Department of Health, one of their experts on COVID safety, and she has agreed to have 2 informational sessions that I'm going to open up, one for staff and then another one for community members, where community members will be able to ask questions along the lines of COVID safety and my student. And she can give a doctor's perspective from the Department of Health about COVID safety in school. Not about her procedures, but just the facts about COVID safety in school from a Department of Health physician's perspective. And that will be on the 25th. That will be on the 25th, by the way.
Thank you, David. Victoria?
Thank you, Paul. So I just wanted to take my roundtable. I wanted to say that I will not be running for re-election. I've truly been disappointed in the way that board members are being presented as unsupportive of our teachers and community. I personally donated my first year's board salary back to Berrytown Schools Eco program, and yet I still hear that I am not supportive of the schools. I've volunteered my time, I've donated money and materials to numerous programs within the school system, and yet I've been labeled as unsupportive. Parents whose children have been in class with my children have even questioned on social media if I care about children in the community, or if I even have children in the district, despite their children being friends with mine. Being a board member means having to make difficult decisions. And I will say, when I spoke previously about eliminating a school position, for the next few weeks, I received a frosty reception every time I came to volunteer at the school. A friend of mine was told that she didn't know my true character and motives based upon my time on the school board. Her response that she had known me for almost 35 years, and those questioning my character were sorely mistaken. In short, my time as a board member has made me question my schools and my community more than ever. I hope that taking time away will help bring back my confidence in both. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. It's a tough job that we're all doing here, and sometimes the reward is not there. But we still have to keep pushing on. Gina?
Thank you, Paul. I apologize, I missed a bit of the meeting there. I know that there's a lot of frustration right now. I think on all sides, everyone is frustrated with the situation that we're in. I think we need to remember that we have information now that we didn't have before, and it's easy to ask, with all the information we have now, why didn't we make certain decisions before? And I think that we need to keep in mind that everybody is genuinely trying to make the best decisions that they can with the information that they have in order to keep the kids in our district safe. I've said before that I'm a very risk-averse person. I won't say that I look at the COVID cases every single day, but I know that when I looked today, the number that I saw was the highest number that I've ever seen. It was close to 200 cases a day. We're having more cases, not fewer. We have a strain that's more contagious. We, I think, are on the precipice of things getting really out of control again. So I believe wholeheartedly that the goal of everybody responsible for making decisions in this district is to get children back in school as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And I also fully support the decisions that we're making to keep children safe, even if that means that they're going to have less time in the school buildings.
Thank you, Gina, for that perspective. We sometimes forget where we are and where we were. There has been improvement, but patience is wearing thin. Alice?
I just have a couple of things. First of all, I would like to respond to Victoria in, excuse me, in saying that I have not known her for 35 years, but in the years that I have known her on both the Berrytown board and on this board, that her perspectives have been welcome and have inspired us. And anyone who believes anything other than that does not have a good grip on who Victoria is. And second of all, just to add a little levity to this, it would not be January, unless I reminded everyone that during the January thaw, we need to wash the buses.
Thank you, Alice. Appreciate your
Thank
perspective.
you, Alice.
Giuliano?
Sorry, I missed a little bit of the meeting, computer issues. I would urge anyone who likes to vocalize on online venues, maybe they should submit a form and take a few minutes to participate in the board as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, my perspective and roundtable is, all in all, throughout the entire time of this new district, we've had a lot of bumps, we've had a lot of bruises along the way, but I will say that by and large, we've pulled together as a team. We've made difficult decisions. We've had some disagreements, which you gotta have. Otherwise, there's something wrong with us if we all agree. I appreciate working with each and every one of you. I too will not be running for renewal as a board member. I figured when I got into my 70s, I had to be more than community service and work. So I'm thinking that I might be able to kick back a little bit. That does not mean that I won't participate in some way, whether vocal or maybe at a committee level with the school district. I firmly believe in education. I firmly believe that we have a duty to make razor sharp geniuses out of our kids whenever possible. And I think we've had several different kinds of body blows, ranging from discord from 46 and a whole bunch of other social issues, and on top of that, a pandemic and a new superintendent. I don't know what else could have been thrown at us in the course of 1 year, but we've had our share. I hope those of you who remain on the board can really dedicate yourself to the purpose of what it means to be a board member, especially in this district, which has so many souls that are in the balance. I appreciate what has happened with trying to get through some very, very difficult things, and I appreciate the opinions that have been out there. It doesn't matter if we all agree, as I said before, but I think we're moving in a direction that hopefully at the end of the day will lead us to a brighter day. And on a personal note, I would like to echo what Alice said about Victoria. I've had an opportunity to work with Victoria from the first day she got on this board. Victoria and I have worked on crunching a lot of numbers together and looking at ways to make this district run more functionally and more economically. And for that, sometimes that appreciation is lost on the individuals who are really trying to do what's best for the district. So my personal thank you to Victoria for her efforts as well. Other than that, is there any other things that anybody wishes to say?
And Paul, I'm just going through the roster. I wondered if was Tim involved in the roundtable?
Yes, I thought I called on you, Tim, right? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
See, that's what senility is. The next thing I'm going to graduate to will lead to. So we'll just keep plugging right along. We are now coming to future items on the agenda. We've got a bunch of readings. We're also going to have an evaluation formation. Are there any other things that we want to have on the upcoming agenda? Besides reports, go ahead.
Victoria made a suggestion, and I wonder if we can have a discussion or just some data about how instruction delivery is happening in other districts of similar size to our own. I'm specifically thinking high school, because in 7th and 8th grade, because those are the kids that were having the largest, or are feeling the largest impact. So I sent an email out, but can we add that to the agenda? And I'm not sure if you'll have time to do it for the next meeting, but.
I really don't see why that can't be done, because it's a matter of making some telephone calls to talk with other individuals, maybe other superintendents, Dave, you're in contact with, and just see what their protocols are. I mean, that shouldn't be that difficult to contact 5 of the large schools in the state.
No, I can have, agreed, I can have a report for the next meeting.
That'd be soon enough for you, Sonia?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We
And
are now,
will we also
Go
be
ahead.
discussing superintendent goals at the next meeting, or is that the first meeting in February?
We can do that at the next meeting. That would be a good agenda topic.
Okay, thank you.
okay, and we will have any other updates on our fiscal by that meeting. We're getting closer to the year end, and if we're still on target.
Will we have any updates? By our next meeting, we won't have anything different because our next meeting is still January. And then in February, we've pushed that meeting back. So I'm not sure if we'll have any updated financials, maybe by the end of February.
Okay. Thank you. Now we come to the point of executive
Paul,
session.
I
Yes.
think, are you going to add a, I don't know how you want to title it this far into the year, but reopening update, or it was something that we discussed tonight, but that isn't on the agenda. Do you know what I'm saying? So what do you want to call it? And do you want to have another update on how school reopening is going?
I don't know, what's the pleasure of the board?
Can we call it instruction delivery and just discuss it when we discuss the data that David's going to get for us?
Okay, sounds reasonable. Any other thoughts? Then I'll move on to the executive session. This is about negotiations, and who will be coming in besides David and the board?
So first we need a motion that
Yes.
the board agrees to find that premature general public knowledge of the item proposed for discussion, specifically negotiations/labor relations agreements, would clearly place the Barre Unified Union School District at a substantial disadvantage should the discussion be public.
Who wants to make that motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, second. Okay, I had.
Who was
all
the
right.
second? I got Sonia and.
I actually had Sonia Spalding first and Guy seconding.
Right, okay, so Guy.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. Is there any discussion on this? All those in favor of moving into exec session, who are we going to bring in with us, first of all?
No, we have to vote on the first motion.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion, thumbs up? Seems like thumbs up across the board.
Victoria, aye.
Victoria's aye. And Giuliano? Yeah, I see Giuliano. Okay, good. Those opposed? So carried, unanimous. Now, who are we bringing into the executive session? We bring in David and anyone else, David?
No, all I would need is the board.
Okay.
You need a motion to move into executive session with the superintendent in attendance.
So moved, Guy.
Second, Sonia.
Okay. Then all those in favor, thumbs up. We are in executive session and you're sending us the link for that, David?
That's right. I've sent the link via email just a little while ago. And again, a reminder to board members, please close out of this meeting before we have our discussion in the next link.
Can we make it 3 minutes just so that we can do the general physical attributes of society?
Yes, indeed.
And if someone can, I don't think I need to remind her, it's been too many years, but Victoria to send me the follow-up information. And then David is going to send me the recording and the attendee list. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.